So a lot of people like to say that Gen Z is the sluttiest generation in history. But I would like to push back on the fact that that is, first of all, objectively wrong, and also push back on the idea that that is even a bad thing. Okay, so people will say that Gen Z is the sluttiest generation in history. I see the shit online all the time. And that's just objectively wrong. Okay, Gen Z statistically has way less sex than any other generation. Okay, we have less sex than the millennials, who had less sex than Gen X, who had about the same amount as the boomers. And previous generations, maybe they may have been not very slutty, but they were getting married pretty young, and which I don't think is a good thing. But people will say, "Oh, we live in a generation full of Bonnie Blues." You know, there's only one Bonnie Blue, okay? And there's always going to be a Bonnie Blue. There's always going to be very, very slutty and very, very sex addicted people, okay? Looking back in time, I like to think about Mick Jagger, okay? That guy has a body count of about 3,000, according to him. I believe it. I believe it. Sure, he's like 80, but like most of those bodies were from when he was young. I know he's not having that much sex right now. He's got like a pretty attractive 40-something-year-old wife, but I doubt he's hitting that shit very much because he's old. But like, that guy was a fucking slut, bro, right? That guy had a severe sex addiction, and then he went into the therapist to be treated for his sex addiction, and he ended up fucking the therapist. That guy was the Bonnie Blue of his time. Sure, he didn't fuck 1,000 girls in a day, but I mean, the logistics of that just don't really work out too well. You can only bust so many nuts before your dick starts to hurt. So, it just doesn't really work for a man. But, there's only one Bonnie Blue. And I mean, I think the one thing about Gen Z that I will say is a bit degenerate is the presence of OnlyFans. Okay, but also you got to realize, I saw a statistic that like 10% of women in America age 18 to 24 have an OnlyFans. I seriously doubt that's accurate, but even if it's like 1%, that's still a lot. But you got to keep in mind that, like, who is the market for OnlyFans, okay? Because it's not Gen Z men, okay? We all know that you can get corn for free. And even the biggest gooners among us are going to be watching our corn on, like, Reddit or Cornhub. Okay, we're not paying for a girl's OnlyFans. The people who are paying for a girl's OnlyFans are going to be old men who, like the pseudo-intimacy that an OnlyFans will bring because, like, they're divorced or, I don't know, their wife doesn't put out or something. And so, that explains that, so it's not really a degeneracy on the men. As for the women, can you really blame them? Okay, because in this current economy, in this current job market, everybody's just trying to get by, okay? These are not evil sluts. These are just people trying to put food on the table. Some of them might be evil sluts, but most of them aren't. And I don't know, like Gen Z we don't have any more sex than any other generation. We have less sex than any other generation. People will blame hookup culture on our poor dating market. Hookup culture is not a thing, guys. There's no such thing as hookup culture. Hookups have always been a thing, okay? We've been hooking up since the beginning of time. People have been hooking up before we could fucking talk. Hookup culture isn't a fucking thing. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about with that. But, it's just, I see so much hate towards, people having casual sex. And there's nothing wrong with having casual sex. Like, there is a slight correlation between, like, amount of partners and how likely you are to not do well in a relationship, or how likely you are to, like, get divorced or cheat or something. But it's not a very big correlation, and correlation does not equal causation. I don't know what the reason for that is, but I don't think we can conclude that that's the reason. You can have a perfectly good relationship after having some fun in your young years. Like me personally, I have 6 bodies, and only one of those has been from a relationship. But you know, I still am very much a lover boy. I'm a D1 lover boy type shit. I can't wait till I have a woman who I can hold and love and, you know, have kids with and have a great wife. You know, I want all that shit. But, you know, I'm not going to meet my wife tomorrow, so might as well hook up with a hot chick tomorrow. You know? Might as well. But, you know, and people will blame, like, the erosion of our culture on it. That is some kind of horrible thing for our culture. Okay? Cultures don't really get hurt by that shit. Okay? Think about the Romans. I think the Romans did all right. Okay? And they were a very promiscuous culture. Or even if you think about, like, you know, in the modern day, like some of the Scandinavian countries, like think about like places like the Netherlands. These places have a way higher like average body count. I think their average lifetime partners in those areas is like 15, whereas the average in America is like 7. But they have like a way higher quality of life index. Life is way better over there. And you know, you can blame that on other reasons, but I mean, you know, I don't think the sex hurts. You know, I think to a certain extent, you know, the amount of sex that people have might be a general idea of like the positivity of their culture. You know, because if people are more positive, they're going to be out there having more fun, having a good time. You know, because they're loving life. You know, so I don't think there's anything really wrong with it. And you know, I'm not hating on people who want to wait until marriage. You know, like there's nothing wrong with that. I have a friend who is waiting until marriage, and he's about to get married in like 2 weeks. And you know, good for him. You know, I fully respect people who want to do that. But anyways, and also my brother, he's a very religious man. But you know, even he's not doing this whole shit about like, oh, if a girl's not a virgin, she's tainted to me. No, he's like, you know, if a girl has had partners in the past, but you know, she's realized why that's wrong and she's gotten back on her path with God, then I'm fine with that, you know? And you know, I think that is like positive Christianity. That's a good form of Christianity. I'm not very religious, but you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to wait until marriage, and you know, I respect people who can do that. But you also can't hate people who don't want to do that, okay? Because not everybody's gonna do that, and there's not really anything wrong with not doing that. You know, you don't have to do that shit. I ain't doing that shit. Anybody who does, you know, you're a better man than me, but I ain't doing that shit. But yeah, and then another big thing, you know, I see like the big guys who are like, you know, promoting this very puritanistic worldview. A lot of them are like incels. Okay, incels. Like, why are you guys hitting on women for not sleeping with you, but also hitting on women for sleeping with people? Like, make it make sense. The fuck are we doing here? I also think that, like, you know, you want to talk about hypergamy, okay? I don't know if hypergamy is, like, really a thing. To a certain extent, it might be. But I think hypergamy might be a thing when it comes to hookups, okay? And a large portion of that is because of slut shaming, okay? Because, like, if you're slut shaming these women so much, then obviously they stand a lot more to lose from a relationship reputationally. And so they're not going to want to hook up with a guy, you know, unless he's quite a catch, unless he's quite good looking. And of course, stuff like personality doesn't really factor into a hookup. And so if you're slut shaming girls, then they're going to be a lot less willing to hook up with guys, and they're only going to want to hook up with a guy if he is quite a catch. And so that's why hypergamy is a bit of a thing when it comes to hookups, but it's not as much of a thing when it comes to relationships, because I think that women care a lot more about personality and vibe and, you know, stuff like that when it comes to relationships, whereas for hookups, you know, it's a lot more looks based. And I think a lot of that is because of, you know, slut shaming. Like, we gotta stop slut shaming these women. If a woman hooks up with a bunch of guys, then she's gonna be seen as a whore. But if a guy hooks up with a bunch of girls, he's gonna be seen as a goat. Like, what are we doing here? You know, I don't really like this whole puritanism and this whole slut shaming thing that we have. It's not a good thing, and it's not doing us any good. And you know, I think at the end of the day, I think that a lot of the puritanism is just cope, okay? Because our generation has really been fucked over by the social media algorithms, the isolation that's been brought about by COVID and everything, that has had a really bad effect on our psyche, because that was during formative years. And, a plethora of other things have made our generation very much messed up. And I think this whole puritanism is a very big cope. Okay, because a lot of the guys who are like, oh, I'm wait until marriage, I want a virgin wife, shit like that. You're not having sex because you're a man of God. You're not having sex because you don't get any bitches. Okay? A lot of it really is cope. And I don't like it at all. Okay? Because, there's nothing wrong with having a good time. At the end of the day, we just got to have a good time. Okay? We're only put on this earth for so long. So, do whatever you want, man. Like, honestly, like, also our generation drinks less than other generations. We party less, I see that a lot at my college, okay, because I am in a fraternity at my college. And when I hear the shit that my fraternity did in the past, like, when I hear shit from the alumni from the past, they were partying so much and having such a good time. And a big part of this is also because of the older generations, because, of course, you've got the older generations in the leadership at the college who are cracking down on partying. And fuck those guys. But our generation, we have less fun. We party less. We're not having as good of a time overall. And guys, AI, okay? A lot of the people who are developing AI say that they think that AI is probably going to wipe out humanity. I personally believe that by the time I'm 80, humanity will have been wiped out by AI. I don't think I'm going to live to 80. I don't even know if I'm going to live to 40. AI is such a terrible thing, and it is compounding at such a high rate in complexity. And at a certain point, we're not going to be able to control that shit. And I fully believe that AI is going to wipe out humanity, okay? The end of humanity is going to go extinct by the end of our generation. I personally believe that. And so, why not party? Why not have a good time? Why not have some sex? Why not drink? Why not have a good time? Have some fun, okay? I'm here for a good time, not a long time. We are probably the last generation who is going to be able to have a semi-full life. So do whatever the fuck you want with that life. Let's stop with this fucking Puritan shit. Let's stop with this fucking, it's so lame to, party and have a good time. Dude, so many people are hating on partying, bro. I saw this one video, fucking pissed me off. It was this one guy, and he was like, oh, hey, I got a protein shake, and we're watching, I'm eating protein cookies, and I'm watching WWE. Is this peak life? And we're not drinking? He was like, we're not drinking? I'm like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Bro, nobody cares that you don't drink. Stop making you feel like you're a better person because you don't drink and you don't hook up and you don't party. Okay? Nobody gives a fuck. If you don't want to do that shit, whatever. That's fine. Us people who are going to do that shit, just let us have some fun. All right? Let us have some fucking fun. Let's stop with this fucking... This just fucking stupid fucking, restrictiveness. Just let us have some fucking fun, all right? Let's have a fucking good time, because we're all going to die. So let's have a good time, all right? And let's stop with this shit, okay? And let's have a little bit more sex. Have a little bit more sex, all right? Because sex is good, all right? If you have sex, then it's going to make you feel... It's going to, sex it actually has a lot of health benefits, okay? And it's going to make you feel happier. If you have more sex... you're going to be happier, all right? It really does, it lowers your cortisol levels. A lot of these incels like to talk about, don't spike your cortisol. Have some sex. Your cortisol level will go down, all right? It'll be a good thing. Also, you get some good cardio in. Make you a little bit leaner. you know, and it's fun cardio. It's not like you're running on the treadmill, which fucking sucks, you know. Sex is a good cardio. I love that cardio. It's my favorite cardio. Only cardio I do. So yeah, this was a little bit jumbled. I sort of ranted a bit. Maybe I didn't quite get to the point the best way that I could have. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys found it entertaining. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, and follow my Twitch. Y'all have a good one.